Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable, Behavior Explained. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today to our show, Adaptable. We're going to talk today about divorce, the kinds of divorce that people get, and most importantly, some of the choices that we can make to make it the least adversarial and least traumatic experience that can be. Divorce inherently is not a fun process. And so with us today, I have my esteemed colleague. Her name is Diane Sullivan. She is a family law attorney, and she's got a bunch of other feathers in her cap related to why she's an excellent choice to have as a guest on our show today. And so I'm so grateful for you being here today. And I would like you to just introduce a little bit more about yourself and who you are and why this is a topic that you felt passionate about sharing with our audience.
Well, like you said, my name is Diane. I'm a family law attorney. I've been an attorney probably about 25 years now. I was a former judge. I sat on the criminal bench for approximately 16 years. I was a prosecutor. I was a domestic violence prosecutor. I did criminal defense. So I've basically had the rare privilege to wear every hat in the courtroom. And what I've seen with people going through a divorce is that it's, like you said, not a fun process, not an easy process for people to go to. And I found that as attorneys, if we can just learn to meet people where they are in their process, in their moment, in their emotions, we can just be so much more helpful in this process.
Right. Well, and it's so traumatic in nature, generally speaking, because we're going to suffer a loss. We have to think about the picture that we had when we chose to get married and what we wanted to have as far as our life and our future. And then we have to grieve the loss that this is not going the way that we wanted. And so it's traumatic in nature for most of us if we go through a divorce. Can you tell me a little bit what your understanding about trauma and why you know so much about trauma?
Well, I know so much about trauma from my own journey.
Sure.
I have complex post-traumatic stress, and I started my own work. And once I had that kind of information and that kind of healing and that kind of recovery, I thought, how do I not pay this forward to people in general, but especially my clients? So I tell my clients when they meet with me the first time, our office is holistic. We do things differently. I mean, we not only will get you on the other side of your divorce or custody case, I said, but we talk about healing. We talk about mental health. We talk about self-care. We talk about making sure that we are understanding all of your questions and meeting all of your needs. I found that really gets rid of at least 50% of people's anxiety. Just that they know the process, there's someone to walk them through it, to answer questions. That in and of itself really helps.
Sure. Well, and being heard, but I can't imagine in law school, you guys get very much training on mental health and how to show up for somebody related to mental health. So how have you learned that piece?
Yeah, we get none. I have my bachelor degree is in behavioral health, so that gave me at least a foundation. But as attorneys, you just really have to have the wherewithal to get that education. Right. We often as attorneys get very stressed out by our clients because we feel like they're not listening to us. They're not getting us what we need to help them win or get the result that they want. And what I found is that's mostly our fault because we're not meeting them where they are. So not only do you have clients showing up better and more receptive to what you're saying, you as an attorney are not getting as stressed out because your clients actually hear what you're saying and can show up as the best them to help you get what they want in their case.
Right. Well, and I imagine that if someone isn't in their prefrontal cortex because they're flipped out and they're triggered because of whatever they're going through, it's not even maybe that they don't want to get you or they don't want to be cooperative. It's that they are not online to take in the information you're asking because they're so emotionally distraught and simply can't. They can't digest what you're asking them to do. And so you having more awareness about where the client is and like you said, meeting them where they are so that they can, you might need to repeat it or go, hey, like, I don't know that got in. Can you share back with me what I need you to do before we meet again, just to get us all on the same page? And you might have more understanding about what that looks like because of what you're talking about today. I can't imagine many lawyers are that in tune about this.
Yeah,
you know?
not a lot of us are. Like I
Right.
said, it takes the initiative to get this kind of an education. Just like we as lawyers are not taught how to run businesses either.
Right.
It's something
Same
that
as
we
therapists.
exactly.
We have no idea.
If we're not getting an MBA somewhere, it's
Right.
it's either it's additional post law school training. So especially as family practitioners, that's just it's so important.
Right.
And how I describe to clients self-care and meeting their own mental health needs is I tell them the reason's twofold. Why I'm such a proponent of it. I said, one is purely selfish.
Right.
I said, I want to get you the result you want. I want to win. You're case free. People understand the winning analogy. I said, so I need the best you. I can't do it by myself.
Yeah.
I need
That's
the
why
best
you give us so many referrals.
Yes, exactly. I said, that's the selfish reason.
Right.
I said, the more selfless reason is I'm human, you're human. Right. I said, I have this information. I know how life-changing good mental health care can be.
Right.
How do I not pass that on to every human, not just clients?
I see that you have a rock in your shoe. I can just watch you walk around on it, or I can say, you could get that rock out of your shoe and help, regulate your emotions so you can show up in your best self. So what kind of law do you practice?
I practice what falls under the umbrella of family law. Most people don't know what that entails. Sure. Family law is divorce, is legal separation, things like annulment. So all basically different ways to end or separate a marriage. What we used to call custody. We don't call it that in Arizona anymore, but most people understand the word custody. Perhaps you haven't been married, but you have children together. Sure. How do we navigate that now that we're not in any kind of relationship together? What used to be called grandparents' rights. We lawyers have to call everything fancy, so we call it in Latin, it's called in loco parentis rights. It's basically any kind of third party rights over a child. That's considered family court.
Is that how that works? So like if parents didn't have a will or any guardianship indicated, if they were both in a car accident at the same time, is that where grandparents have some inherent rights if they stepped forward, or is that not how that works?
In that situation, no, that's a guardianship that would go through juvenile court. But if you have at least one living parent and there is a third party, regardless if there's a biological relationship or not, that wants some sort of decision-making or parenting time over that child, that's filed in family court.
Okay.
Yeah, child support, spousal maintenance, all of that falls under the umbrella of family court.
Okay.
So that's the kind of law that I primarily
So everything you're
practice.
dealing with is likely at least somewhat contentious.
Yes. I mean, even what we call a nice case where it's uncontested. It's like you said earlier, it's a traumatic event. Right. Even if people are working together amicably to reach an outcome that they can both live with, it's still traumatic.
Sure. So there's a lot of buzz going around about this term called collaborative divorce. Tell me a little bit about what that is.
Collaborative divorce is a respectful, out-of-court, private way to get divorced.
When you say private, what's that mean?
It means that none of the communications, none of the what you would refer to as evidence is ever made public record. It is all done out of court as part of a team. And when I explain this process to people, they'll usually say, well, we're splitting up. We're not together. We can't do anything as a team. The team is your team. So all you as the parties have to do is recognize, okay, we don't want this to ruin our lives and our children. And what can we do to reach a resolution where we're not at each other's throats and get on the other side of this with some respect for each other and love going forward for our children.
Okay. And who would be on that team as far as a collaborative divorce is concerned?
It depends. The team can be as big or as small as you want it. So at minimum, there's 2 attorneys. Each party has an attorney. There's things like a child specialist that's on board that will help people craft a parenting plan and a child, sharing schedule that works for them and works for their children. There's a financial neutral, which that person reviews all of the parties' finances and assets and helps them come up with the best way to divide those assets, taking into account things like taxation and taxable transfers and things like that, and spousal maintenance and all those things. There can be a communication coach, which basically is going to teach people how to just better communicate not only with each other, but their children. So those are usually the main players, but there can be mediators. There can be sometimes mental health professionals. Sometimes, we're going to have mom and or dad's counselor be a part of this collaborative process.
So, well, you mentioned mediation. What is mediation, and what's the difference between that and, for example, a collaborative divorce?
It's similar in that it's an out-of-court process. Mediation usually occurs when there is already a matter pending in family court, although you can have pre-mediation filing, but that's usually, pre-filing mediation. But usually the difference is that there's already a process going on. But the similarity is that you're working together to reach a resolution that works for both of you, that you two had ownership in crafting. Okay. And it's usually...
So people who might get along, a little better, but they've just decided we shouldn't be married anymore might be okay just using a mediator.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes when you do a mediation process, sometimes each party still has an attorney. Oh. It's not necessarily something that you can't have an attorney to do mediation. Okay. The mediator is a third party neutral. I'm a trained mediator. So as part of my practice, I also act as the mediator. Okay. So you'll have the mediator and you'll have both the parties, sometimes with lawyers, sometimes without lawyers. And the mediator helps them get to a resolution. Sometimes that's what we call a global resolution, meaning that's everything we're fighting about. Everything on the table. We've resolved everything. We're going to put it in writing, file it with the court. Sometimes it's what's just called a partial resolution. And even that's fantastic. So maybe just you have 10 issues and 8 you agree on. That's great.
Right.
And maybe you just have to have the court
Imagine that
decide.
saves quite a bit of money.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're putting whatever this is into a judge's hands. Ultimately.
Into a judge's hands who's known you 5 minutes.
Right.
It would scare me.
Right.
If I was in that process. And both collaborative divorce
and they're not mental health trained at all. Judges aren't.
Most are not.
Okay.
And they are not. They are given approximately less than 10 hours of family law training. And sometimes they are already well into their judicial appointment before they even receive that training because it's only offered twice a year.
Wow. So a lot of people probably are very unaware that I'm going to go through this process and I'm going to trust the system to look out for my best interest, when in fact, there's no way a judge wouldn't also have bias around how they make a choice because...
as a mental health professional, everyone has bias.
Right.
Judges are trained, and I know many judges, being a judge myself, they take very seriously that role of being neutral and judging the facts. But it's inherent and usually subconscious. Right. And most judges don't have, they're not family court. They've never been family practitioners before. Okay. So,
and you could, just from what you're saying today, it sounds to me like collaborative divorce, if you can get in agreement with the person you're divorcing, would be the best, because at least then there's people with proper training that are looking out for outcomes, whether it's financial or whatever. And if we're looking at being, balanced humans, we want things to resolve in a way that's the most reasonable and fair.
And that you have ownership of.
Right.
That you are a part of that process.
You can agree and disagree and whatever else. And
and how I usually sort of sell collaborative to people is because, again, they're saying, we're not getting along, we can't agree to do that. But most people can agree they would like a faster, less expensive process.
Okay, sure.
And
who doesn't want to save money and not be doing this for a year
collaborative
or 2 years?
And mediation are almost always quicker and less expensive.
Okay. So you would say that that would be the best way to get a divorce. If you're we have to do this.
Absolutely.
Okay. And is that only if you have children, or is a collaborative divorce still beneficial if you don't even have children?
It can be a collaborative process. Doesn't even have to be divorce. You could have a collaborative custody process. Oh. Anything can be handled in that collaborative. Okay.
So
form.
even after you've been divorced, could you get a collaborative person to help you figure out better custody based on? Okay. What's the difference between that and, for example, a COBE?
COBE is a court-appointed behavioral intervention. So in a COBE process, there has to be an avowal to the court that there are no parental fitness issues. There has to already be, whether it's a permanent or a temporary parenting time order. Okay. And the goal of the COBE is to get the parties and the children to the point where the children that order is being followed. Because normally a COBE process starts and you have children that don't want to see one parent. That's normally how it starts. Right. The COBE's goal is to get the children back to whatever the current custody arrangement is.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because I just saw that a recent House bill in Arizona came out. Have you been familiarized with I'm not exactly sure what number it is, but maybe you could speak more to that. But essentially this House bill prevents requiring reunification with parents. Is this, what are your thoughts on this new bill?
It's actually very narrow and is really just meant to prevent what I always used to call the nuclear option in family court. I've only seen it happen once or twice.
What do you mean when you say a nuclear option?
And that is just my catchphrase.
Okay.
But basically what it means is that if you have a situation where one parent, where the children are not seeing one parent, you have the children who are with the one parent, that's called the favored or the aligned parent.
Aligned parent.
Yes.
I see this from a mental health
Yes.
angle, and it's very hard to do.
And then you have the other parent that's the less favored. I don't even know what the term is, but basically the parent that's not seeing the child. What the nuclear option is the court ordering a 100% shift in parenting time to the non-favored parent, and giving either no visitation. It's usually no visitation for a short period of time, no contact, no nothing with the favored parent. It's a complete just shut down of that parent's.
And what's the
time.
thinking behind that? Formerly having done that,
that is usually done in a case where we think the alignment is happening because of the favored parent, not because of abuse or something that has legitimately happened to the child by the non-aligned parent.
So I've seen this a couple of times. I'm wondering if that's not going to be a requirement, what is going to be the way to solve for that? Because it's amazing how children can become so aligned with the favored parent, and how, every time I've seen it, it's very manipulative and it's so mentally toxic and dysfunctional. But if they don't know it, or they're unwilling to see that part of things, how will we solve for this in the future when it comes to a legal thing, if that's not how we try to solve for this, disrupting of that alignment that's done maliciously, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly.
It is that COBE or that therapeutic process. And I have a case right now where this is similarly what's going on. And it's basically you exhaust all of those options before you ask the court, be like, all right, you know what, I think maybe we need a change in our parenting time order due to the favored parent's refusal to correct either their behavior that's causing this, or to be part of the solution to reunify that child with the other parent. Because you know as well as I do, sometimes it is a situation where the favored parent doesn't really understand the damage they're doing. So they either need to be educated and correct their behavior, or that's then when the court steps in.
And saying, you're just not getting it, and this is causing damage to the children that you're not seeing. Because ultimately, if we have good enough parents, whatever that looks like, whether it's a man and a woman, whether it's two men, two women, because I don't want to exclude any kind of family. If we have good enough parents, it is in the children's best interest to have time that is not negatively impacted by the time by the other parent. Like, it's best for the children.
And that's how our law is written. It's a popular misconception. People will say, well, Arizona is a 50-50 state. Well, meaning equal parenting time. Not really. Our statute says it is in the best interest of children to have substantial and frequent parenting time with each parent, all things being equal. That there's no drug issues, that there's no significant domestic violence, that there's no mental health issues that either aren't being treated or are impacting a parent's parenting.
That's really good to know. I think the timing of this show is good, because I just saw this morning in our team, our internal team communication, that came out, and so I was like, what's going to happen now? When we had these as options if we run into this. So that's good to hear that the COBE will be sort of the backup plan.
And it's basically, and what I think the legislature was trying to prevent is from the court ordering that kind of a process where people don't have resources, or one parent doesn't want to participate. Okay, then the court shouldn't be forcing participation. But then at the same time, the court can say, okay, well, if you're not going to participate, I will consider that, and then consider all of the facts and the children's best interest when deciding what should the parenting time schedule be.
Which would likely limit their time with the child, because if they don't want to be a parent, then they're not going to be a good one when it is their turn.
Likely. And that's why, another reason why I stress these out of court solutions. It's family court's not equipped. It's not mental health court. It's not treatment court. They have limited options, limited things that they even have the discretion to order. But with a mediation process or a collaborative process, you as parents can agree on anything you want, because it's your children. And you can put them first and craft that agreement so it works for you. You are not getting a cut and paste, say, holiday schedule that's on the judge's hard drive because you can't agree on one. You really want a judge to tell you what Christmas you can see your children?
Right.
Not me.
That's really good to know. So when in doubt, when possible, elect for a collaborative divorce or collaborative ways to process some of these dissolutions of relationships or custody arrangements and so on and so forth.
At minimum, you want your legal representative to be either trained in collaborative law, trained in mediation, even if you don't do a collaborative process, even if you never go to mediation, because that attorney is going to have that training to what can we do to get you an outcome that you can live with, that you've had some buy-in with, that's best for your children. Right. Our answer is not always to go to court. That's the last option.
Right. So how would we find someone if we're looking, for someone who's trained and skilled enough to do potentially a collaborative situation?
I find referrals are usually the best way to find an attorney that'll be a good fit for you. We in Arizona have a collaborative attorney association. It's called Collaborative Professionals of Phoenix, where anyone who's had that collaborative training is listed on that website. So at minimum, you're getting someone who's well-versed in an out-of-court resolution for your case. Honestly, you want someone that's obviously been practicing a while, so they, obviously know what they're doing, and someone who's you can live with, whose personality you can handle.
Spend a lot of time with them.
Exactly. I mean, even a collaborative process is at least a couple of months. I've had clients I've had for years. So if you have to spend years with me, we have to get along. Not every attorney, even if they're a fantastic attorney, is a fit for every client who walks in the door, and vice versa.
So can you interview, for example, to try to find, are we in alignment? Are we going to have good energy together? You can just interview, and is that called a consultation in law? Okay,
absolutely. I encourage people to do that. Don't hire the first person you consult with. Different attorneys are going to have different approaches, different strategies, and if you haven't met with more than one attorney, you can't even compare and contrast who would be a good fit for your case.
That makes sense. So what are some good questions to ask when interviewing an attorney?
Again, like I said before, do you have any training in collaborative law? Do you have any, sort of training in mental health? Do you have any kind of training in mediation? How long have you been an attorney? How long have you practiced family law? Because you could be an attorney for 30 years and only just started practicing family law.
Yeah, I don't think we know that most of the time.
So these are all good questions to ask. There's no winning or losing in family court. It's not like if you're a criminal attorney, it's like, well, what's your win-loss record? Because that's you win or you lose. Family is different. So an attorney can't really answer that question. It's almost like everybody
loses in family law cases.
Unfortunately.
Every time there's loss because of just the nature of the experience. Yeah.
And going to court, someone always loses. Sure. Because you're not going to get the exact outcome you want. Right. And it's a very expensive, stressful process.
Right. So what could someone expect to pay for one of these experiences? Because I've heard things like $200,000, which most people don't even have. Right. Whereas because attorneys, you guys have a pretty good hourly rate. It's like, I don't want to email the attorney because it's going to cost me $150,
Right. I give when clients hire, I give them sort of how our process works. And everything's transparent. My hourly rate is transparent. Clients get a bill every month so they can see where their money's going. I'm like, always ask questions if you don't understand your bill. I don't charge you for explaining your bill. I said, but anything that doesn't require attorney time or skills, I have my support staff do. Right. And the reason for that is their billable rate is obviously much lower. Sure. So rather than me drafting, say, a disclosure statement, well, my paralegal can do that for probably a third of the price, where I'm just reviewing it, checking it over, because nothing goes out the door of my office. Kind of like bookkeepers and accountants. Like they'd set it up and then the accountant signs off. Nothing goes out the door of my office without me looking at it, no matter how minimum, because that's what you're paying for. Sure. I'm transparent. When you are an attorney and you've been doing things a long time, I can do things a lot faster than an attorney who's, say, been an attorney for a year. Sure. So instead of paying that attorney,
you don't need to go do any research. It's like, I know how to do this. Boom. Exactly. You might even have templates set up in your emails. And
what would take a new attorney 3 hours maybe takes me an hour.
Right.
Yes, you're paying my hourly rate is more than that newer attorney, but you compare that cost at the end, you're still paying me less.
Right. That makes sense. That's kind of what I talk about with people who come to EMDR therapy and they're paying higher because we're specialists. It's like, but your treatment time is going to go from 5 years to a year. Exactly. You're going to save a lot of money in the long run. And also you're going to get better faster. So you're going to be out of the weeds faster. So I think that you're kind of saying the same thing. Like you get what you pay for, and it is worth the investment to get out of this tumultuous time in a more expeditious manner.
That's always my goal. Where unfortunately, just like mental health professionals, just like any other kind of professional, there are attorneys out there who their end goal is how much can they charge you.
Makes you feel dirty thinking about that. That's
it
gross.
does. I don't even like saying it out loud, but
humans will be fallible.
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I really appreciate all of this. This is so helpful, and
glad.
And hopefully, those who might unfortunately need to have to go through an experience that would require this kind of service and need to know. I think this is great that you've been willing to share your many years of expertise with us.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you want to leave here before we wrap up for today?
You touched on this a little bit earlier, that divorce and custody, it's emotional. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with loss. You're dealing about, if you're going through a divorce, you have had your children in your house 24/7. Now they're only with you half the time. All of that's emotional and it's hard. Right. And you really just want to the extent that you're able, take care of yourself, have a good mental health professional, and make sure if you are going to choose legal counsel, choose legal counsel that you feel understands that and is going to...
It's almost like bedside manner for a medical doctor.
And is going to handle your case with a solution-oriented mindset, not a litigation-oriented mindset.
That's really a really fair thing to say. And I would just add to it, when we're going through an active traumatic experience, which divorce always is, even when done well and not very adversarial, like I said before, it's going to be traumatic, and it always is traumatic for children.
Yes.
I mean, they're going through so much loss, whether they're young or they're old. This is going to be a thing. I would just say make sure people get mental health counseling. Yes. And because it's traumatic, if you can find an EMDR therapist that understands the way things will get stuck if we don't address it, I would recommend that for sure.
I recommend it for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got to do things that work.
Yes, exactly.
Let's be effective and efficient.
Exactly.
So, great. Well, I thank you so much for being on with us today. A wealth of knowledge. Diane Sullivan, if you're looking for some advice, or you're in the state of Arizona and you have needs, is it sullivanlaw.com? What's your website?
Sullivan Law AZ.
SullivanLawAZ.com. We'll go ahead and put that in the description if you'd like to investigate further. But hopefully you don't need this. But if you do, I think you'd be in great hands with selecting someone like her, especially as you've gotten to know her a little bit through this experience. But so take care of yourselves if you are going through this process, and make sure that you get the supports that you need. And until we meet again, I thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining us today, Diane. And make sure that you move forward and lead with love, because it'll never steer you wrong.